to A Joy to Be Me, a podcast sharing the magic of minerals, microbes, and a return back to nature's ways. Tune in to learn how to nourish yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It's time to reconnect with and deepen the fundamentals of human health so we can return to our wild state. I'm your host, Lydia Joy. Let's celebrate this wild ride we call the human experience. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to A Joy to Be Me. I hope you're finding joy in being you. Today, I'm going to just dive right into the heart of our episode. I want to build on the themes from my last two episodes, healing burnout, how mothers and environment shape our health, and how maternal microbiomes charge immune health. So if you haven't checked those out yet, give them a listen. You're gonna learn a lot and get a lot of perspective. I really want to help people see the long history of factors shaping our current health paradigm, especially regarding chronic health issues. And I do think understanding the things that influenced us throughout our lives can lead to deeper healing. Personally, reflecting on what has shaped my health and that of my children has been incredibly invaluable to me. I think most people are walking around today not really knowing much at all about this. And, ignorance is not bliss, in my opinion. So, and I think it's, particularly important to kind of get a baseline of understanding as we continue to see the rise of nervous system regulation being, highly focused on. And I want to make sure that we avoid falling into the trap of a new label that distorts our reality or creates any disempowerment or leads us into victimhood. So I do think it's important to face what's led to all of this. Okay. Now, it's true that our current environment has caused a lot of overload, right? So I don't think this makes us ultimately weak or fragile. We may be a little more weak and fragile in the state we're in, but that's something we can turn around. And I don't think that hyper-focusing on every little thing every single day that might dysregulate our nervous systems is a good idea either. I really want us to all slow way down. Go back to just letting the slowest part of you kind of create the pace for your healing, right? And don't worry, as you build more capacity, you will deepen your healing and break free from chronic patterns, especially when you get into addressing mineral balances, heavy metal burdens, recover the microbiome, these things like that. We can't do it all overnight. There's no race to the finish line for this stuff, right? We got to remember the tortoise and the hare. Remember that story? Slow and steady wins the race. I'd like to say it's not even a race. It's a journey of a lifetime. All right. Chronic nervous system dysregulation. I think it invites us to look beyond the surface of everything that's going on, go into the depths, look at the shadows, right? Recognize the influences that may have affected us all throughout our lives. The reality is our bodies are doing their very best to adapt and protect us always. The body is trying to heal itself. And when you get in alignment with this, when you have this awareness, you can take new actions and feel motivated and more clear, right? It's like, you've ever sat around doing a jigsaw puzzle and you get to the point where you're like, where the heck is that one freaking piece that if I don't find it, I can't build out this whole section. Right. I think it's like finding more of the pieces that fit in the puzzle to create that beautiful picture. So I also want us to be more collectively informed about things. so we can all make better choices and share the information with each other and stop supporting harmful practices, and also recognize the ones that have been in play harming us all. And this makes it also important to challenge all the centralized narratives, all of them. You don't have to do it all at once. I'm just saying, like, start to question things when they pop up into your mind and on your journey, right? Question the conditioned routes we've taken, the medical norms that have caused us harm. I personally am looking forward to a long life where I can watch my grandbabies grow up healthy, happy, with much greater ease than I myself or my own children experience. I wish I could have done way more for my kids when they were young. I was unlearning and relearning and still learning, right? Like, it's just such an enormous process. But now that I know better, I can support their well-being and that of their children, and that gives me purpose and something to look forward to. I'm here for that. I am so here for that. I'm not going anywhere in this realm of teaching, that's for sure. So many of us are overwhelmed by the excesses of all the stuff the Western culture has inundated our nervous systems with and created systemic burnout. So here we are. Let's shine the light on these things, right? Let's do it one episode at a time and turn this ship around. It's time to get real with ourselves, guys, okay? So this is something I do in my work with hair tissue mineral analysis. I do functional nutritional therapy. I work with people through my two favorite tests, hair tissue mineral analysis and the BioMFX. Now, I've been able to see a lot of things over the time that I've worked with this tool and with people. And I just think, I want to shine a bigger light, cast a wider net, right? We definitely all have a collective heavy metal burden, and it's nuanced from person to person, but it's there for all of us. And so when we think about heavy metals, we have to understand that they have a density at least 5 times that of water. They can't be metabolized by the body. Right. So we don't need them for use, right? We can take them in and put them in places, right? And they end up acting dysfunctionally in our bodies. But basically, we can accumulate them very easily without realizing it, right? And the toxicity that comes from the heavy metals, once they are sequestered in our body in various places, can impair our mental functions, our energy levels, and yes, the functioning of the nervous system, the kidneys, the lungs, and so many other organs, the brain. So, the way that we want to look at this is bioaccumulation, right? Bioaccumulation happens when the rate of any toxin, the uptake of any toxin in your body surpasses the rate of your ability to eliminate it. Okay? This is a significant concern today, especially since we're exposed to a wide range of toxins from various sources. And yes, I'm sorry to be the one that says this, but it starts in the womb. I'm just pausing for a second because I know we wish that this wasn't the case, right? But this is why I, brought up all of the things about my past, my mother, my body, how it affected me, how it affected my kids, right? So, this cumulative exposure can lead to heightened health risks over time. So it really is something, it's affecting all of us, right? Given the pervasive nature of the toxins in our environment, I think it's something we all need to lean into, being mindful of it, reducing them where we can, but then supporting our bodies to do the repair work from their damage, as well as enhance our natural ways we detoxify things. And yes, we have our work cut out for us. That's why I think it's important to get to it in whatever ways you can and never stop. So when we're overexposed to heavy metals faster than our bodies can eliminate them, our mineral reserves are going to be depleted. This is because heavy metals induce oxidative stress, which the body has to manage over time. And this weakens us, right? Like it weakens our blood-brain barrier. It disrupts so many vital physiological processes. So heavy metals, they are masters of disruption and not in a good way. They have various storage sites in the body. Different ones can be sequestered in different places, but they can be sequestered in fat tissue, the liver, the spleen, the kidneys. Metals like lead and cadmium are more going to seek out the bone, so they'll eventually be transported to and stored in osseous tissues. And they can remain hidden for years. Like you won't know on like your regular annual blood work that they're there, right? So this is why, the work that I do helps us see this picture more clearly. Over time, it gives us even more clarity. And we really have to focus our intention on deepening our health practices to mobilize them for elimination. And the reality is, every chronic disease of all time is going to be linked to deficiencies in what we do need. Then because of that, imbalances or dysbiosis because of what we don't have. And in part, that's because of the excesses of toxicity that make that even more challenging. So it's like this kind of crazy building up effect that we've all been a part of, right? So in any chronic situation, whether it's a labeled disease you might have or just set of chronic symptoms that you have always had or have had for many years, there is definitely a buildup of toxins in your system. And we have to strategically figure out, how can we help this body do better to eliminate these toxins, right? How can we extinguish the fire of the dis-ease in the body, right? And I've said this a million times. This is what I call the real build back better, building human bodies back better. We have to learn all these things to unlearn the wrong things, to like really convince ourselves to do the right things. It's quite a thing. It's quite a big thing that we all have to work on. Now, I want to say this. We're not forcing the issue. We're not forcing the body to try to like hurry up and detoxify in light of all of this all at once or too quickly. Okay. Now that you've become aware, it's like, holy moly, I got to hurry up and clean this mess up. You can't do it like that. Okay. The process has to be strategic and gradual. Remember, it's been building up for a lifetime in you, and this is generations previous to you are impacting you now. It's called degeneration. We learned about this through Weston Price work. We learned about this through the study of epigenetics, lots of stories, research, yada, yada. Please be patient, okay? We can't fix it all in one fell swoop. We can't even fix it in a year. Just start recalibrating towards a lifestyle that allows you to build back better. Be happy with that in the beginning and deepen it as you can, okay? So we rebuild by restoring the inputs we never had right in the first place. All of us. It's all of us. This is just factual, guys. It's not like an insult to anyone. It's just the reality of the world we live in. So by strengthening ourselves, we're going to enhance our resistance to the toxins that are still out there. We're going to improve our reserves to crowd them out. The stronger we become, the easier it is to disallow them and move them back out. And this is going to be really imperative and important and helpful. Now, I want to focus on Mercury today in light of the story I told in my last episodes about the fact that I was in utero in a mother who had a mouthful of amalgams and anemia and low birth weight and a couple of key prominent issues, right? So that's part of what's brought me to this conversation about Mercury, because primarily I would say almost everyone, probably a few cases that I've ever worked with who had fillings in their mouth had the amalgams. Whether they've had them out or replace them with, something else, or they still have them in their mouth. Okay. And many of them have had a mother who also did. Some of them don't know. They actually don't even know. So I asked them and they're like, I'm not sure. So this is where we're all at. Okay. Primarily, most of us. Now, neurodegenerative disorders are what are the chronic conditions that are gradually damaging the nervous system. Why we're finding ourselves in this paradigm of, oh, my nervous system, right? Nervous system regulation galore, particularly our brain. So while these all these different disorders have various contributing factors to them, I'm not blaming only Mercury here. Nothing depletes neurons faster than Mercury. So I'll ask you this. Are your mom's amalgams putting your health at risk? The health of our mothers during pregnancy lays the foundation for our health. Mercury readily crosses the placenta. And, this leads to inflammation. It can impair fetal growth. It can damage our immune, digestive, nervous systems, okay? And all of those things are very common in the population today. Now I don't have any metal fillings in my mouth personally. My story is like what I inherited, okay? And I don't have any other form of mercury put into my body beyond the 7 vaccines as a child that I had. Right? So there would be thimerosal. Anyways, and then so those are the two main ways mercury is being placed into human bodies, okay? these medical means, okay? Then we also have it in our environment. It's very pervasive because of manufacturing. My state has numerous coal plants, right? That adds to my personal heavy metal burden, right? But the thimerosal I just mentioned is, I think it's about 50% mercury by weight. And this is really a significant source of mercury exposure for many people too. And we know that there's no safe level of mercury in the human body. Okay. An average amalgam filling, from what I found, contains 750 to 1,000 milligrams of mercury. And many people have many. Like, it's really rare for someone to only have one, right? So in my practice, I ask clients about their historical exposure to these things. And part of why I do it is to discern, how is this potentially impacting their overall health? Because it's a little harder to know, like, what you got from the environment, especially if you've lived all over the place, right? Like, it's just pervasive. So we can know a little bit more about the potential when we know our exposures to it being directly put into our bodies, right? As well as, like, getting a little educated about where it could be in our food supply. So I always am asking this question because, I'm going to know in the backdrop, it's definitely impacted their overall health, their mineral patterns, their gut health, their genetic predispositions. And mercury can create ongoing trauma within the system, right? Like, it profoundly affects both our physical and mental health. So, I want to know if it's there. I want to know because I'm going to start to make the connections over time with my client and realize, like, are we making gains here? Are we making progress? Do we need to at some point address this more deeply? Okay. And I would go so far as to say, I think there's I'm going to call it trauma. Like, we talk about trauma a lot today. People are becoming more aware of, trauma. That's another one I want to be careful about. I did a whole episode on that. Let's get real about the pieces of things that, like, affect us. I think we get, like, stuck in a loop of, like, claiming a label when we don't shine the light on what's behind it. And that's what I'm trying to do. So if you're like, oh my God, my trauma, blah, 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 don't go blaming your trauma without understanding its roots and it's the environment that created it. So start to learn, like, why do you feel potentially traumatized in your life? Why does it feel like it's holding you back? Like there could be very physiological things as well that have made it harder for you. And I would also go so far as to say we've got some degree of generational trauma since the use of amalgam started 150 years ago. The increase in all these environmental, things, as well as like the vaccine industry, right? So I do think many factors play into this for sure. I just think that the impact of mercury, particularly in the womb, is something we haven't really considered talking about yet. And maybe it's bold of me to say it. I don't know. Seems obvious, but see how it lands for you. See if it lands for you in any way. All right. So it's essential to consider the amount and duration of exposure, the type of mercury, and the body's detoxification capacity. While my personal mercury exposure was lower, I was still born with a mercury burden due to my mother's health challenges, making me more susceptible to environmental toxins. So the good news I find is that awareness is growing. I'm really glad about that because I've been doing this for a while, and man, it was like talking to brick walls. Early on it was like also like risky to even broach it sometimes, but thankfully awareness is growing. More people are understanding it and seeing it and open to it. Many clients are breaking the cycle of toxicity in their lives to heal themselves, to heal and protect their children, to hopefully have children. Heavy metals, especially mercury, pose the greatest risks during pregnancy and early life when development is critical. So please, if you are planning on having children, it's really important to prepare yourselves well. I do believe we're going to see an increase in discussions about heavy metal detoxification, and it may become trendy again a little bit. So just take your time. Don't rush into this. And then gut health as well. And there's a connection there. So in the coming years, we're going to hear way more about this. So I'm trying to get out ahead of it and kind of like give a high level overview with a balanced perspective so we can approach it with proactivity instead of reactivity. Okay. I think as we recognize more and more of these challenges that we've all been facing, it's really, really important to stay grounded and just proactively engage with these issues rather than reactively responding to all the emerging health trends, as well as getting scattered by them all, quite frankly. There's a lot that we think we need to do. And it's true, there is. However, if we do it with an approach that's, very steady, we can start to chip away. Okay. I do think it's going to be important to stay the course and just keep building back our health, right? In order to all start having healthier nervous systems, we'll be able to make more conscious choices, more proactive choices, and not these like unconscious reactions that we've witnessed going on in the greater scope of things. So let's just get into it a little bit here. I want to give a little bit of a better understanding of the potential role mercury could play into chronic conditions or toxicities in your body. And I really do want to do a future episode about amalgams. There is a lot of information you can find out there. If you're my client, we can talk about it. What I will say now is don't rush to get them removed. I don't encourage this. I think if you can wait a minute and just be like preparatory, if you will, I think it's more important to shore up the body and improve endocrine function first and like reverse some of the damage in your system. Make sure all your detox pathways are working well. And your body might be detoxifying okay a little bit. So you might not need to like hurry up and get this done, right? Like overnight, right? I definitely think you should plan for it. Definitely not saying don't ever do it. Just don't go out tomorrow. Don't go out in the next week unless you've already been planning for. Do whatever you're going to do. I'm just saying, like, please don't listen to this, what I'm sharing, and panic, okay? Also, you can check in with your dentist, and make sure like they know what's going on with those fillings. Like make sure they're not loose. Make sure you don't have your teeth aren't like cracking or shifting or something. And it's like, potentially a problem, right? Like ask them specifically about that. Like tell them you're planning on replacing them in the future and you just want to keep an eye on them. We know that mercury accumulates in our brain, our heart, our kidneys, and our endocrine glands. And the physiological effects of these are wide: depression, autoimmune, memory loss, tremors, anemia, heart attacks. And if you think about how every organ correlates with emotions and, those kinds of things as well, which thankfully more people are becoming aware of that as well, it could show you how it shows up in your emotional scape and the challenges that you've personally had. This is why I brought up the trauma piece, right? So when the exposure to mercury stops, honestly, a lot of symptoms can go away. But the effects on the brain and nervous system may be more permanent, unfortunately. So let's talk about metabolic health, right? We know that it's an accumulative poison, so it's going to build up, right? And then it's going to affect a lot of things. And one of the main things is how it interferes with important enzymes that help neutralize all the free radicals, right? I talked about this in the last episode. I went into it a bit. So we know that leads to the oxidative stress, and that's what's doing all the damage. It's damaging our cells, right? It's causing inflammation in our bodies. Those are some of the big things that is affecting all of us, right? And that can lead to a lot of these chronic health issues, diseases, and such. So when the mercury, like it incapacitates these enzymes, right? So our body then just can't defend itself against the damage that's accruing. And that's really where we get into trouble, right? So then we have the disruption of the mitochondria, right? We talked about that in the last episode. And then, so ultimately, we get inflamed. We lose energy production. And then we become more difficult. We become more challenged to detoxify, right? So we start to get inflamed. Then we have less energy. Then all of a sudden now we can't detoxify well. And one of the reasons is glutathione, one of our big antioxidants, one of our main antioxidants. And mercury can actually lower our glutathione in our cells over time. And that's another reason why we just like have a reduced ability to deal with all the oxidative stress. So when we start to do the repair work, we want to help make sure the body is able to produce glutathione. And then our bodies can work better, right? But when we don't have enough there, we become way less capable of detoxifying the harmful substances. And this is what leads to the vulnerabilities that we have, right? This is a deeper way to look at our vulnerable state, where we feel, maybe collectively we feel fragile, or we feel traumatized, or we feel however we feel. It's because there's actual physiological things going on in our bodies making us feel that way, psychologically and emotionally as well. So all of this can have a ripple effect on, things like insulin resistance, obesity. As our metabolic systems struggle more and more and more over these generations to function properly, we see it rising, right? So if someone's already mercury toxic, they're going to find it even harder to deal with other like dietary stressors. This is like I could go into a whole episode long about all this. Like if we sat down and we looked at how mercury hurts every specific enzyme and how it helps us with all these specific foods, right? Like we know that some of the enzymes it hurts are like the lipase, and the amylase and the maltase, right? And how we need those in place to digest certain types of foods like our dairy and our starches and our grains, right? And we have this collective challenge where people are not tolerating those foods. Of course, yes, the quality and the source that we've been given is total garbage, right? So, but then when you get to the point where you know that, and then you try to put in the real deal, right? The quality versions, and you still struggle to digest them, it's because your body's not producing the proper enzymes, right? And one of the pieces is the mercury helped lead you to that. It's not the only thing, but it's something that can be lurking. And then I've noticed that, the more mercury exposure people have, the more they have a hard time with these foods, right? So I think it's really important to understand these connections, because I don't want to take enzymes my whole life. I don't want to take foods out my whole life. I don't want to feel these ways my whole life. Do you? Right? So when we dig in and we see these deeper causes, we can arm ourselves with ways to approach this and do the repair. So I just think that understanding these connections, really underscores the importance of keeping an eye on things, specifically mercury today we're talking about, but because it accumulates and can pose these long-term health risks, proactivity and minimizing and doing all the things over time will really help collectively, and you and me and my kids and their kids. So then we go to mental health, right? So it's really hard to overlook this one. It is such a potent neurotoxin. So small amounts can affect your brain, your nervous system. This can lead to loss of motor skills, which can manifest in a bunch of ways. Like maybe you have difficulty with coordination or fine motor movements. Look at your kids, right, and see how they're doing. This can be incredibly frustrating and confusing, and depending on how it shows up in people, right? And it can really affect your daily activities and make even simple tasks feel challenging. Then the behavioral piece, right? We can see it show up as like social withdrawal in a more extreme case. Extreme introversion, like shyness. And sometimes it seemingly comes out of nowhere, or it starts out with like kids are like just more like that, right? So that doesn't feel really great, and it can be a little alarming to people, right? And it can be challenging in our relationships and social dynamics, right? So this is that whole emotional, psychological piece. And I think it leaves people feeling isolated and misunderstood. And then here we are, we've got this whole generation of people who are feeling traumatized by that as well, right? So one of the more insidious effects of mercury is its connection to excitotoxicity. This is when there's that excess of glutamate in the brain, a neurotransmitter that, while we need it, it's important for communication between neurons, it can really become harmful in excessive amounts. And the chronic exposure of mercury can interfere with our body's ability to regulate glutamate levels. And this leads to a state of excitotoxicity. It damages our neurons over time. And this is, definitely linked to neurodegenerative diseases. So these are any of the conditions that we know about that are progressively going to impair cognitive function. It can be throughout the span of our life, right? Now we're seeing it on the rise in our elder population, and that age range is getting lower. Like we're starting to see it earlier, right? So this long-term cognitive decline, it's, oh man, it's no joke. So anyways, as the neurological changes take place in your system, you might start to find your cognitive ability slipping. I can't tell you how many of my clients who've said to me things about like, when I finally did get my amalgams out, it's like I could start to find words again that I couldn't seem to find for a while, right? Stuff like that. Like all of a sudden, like, and they didn't realize, that it was insidiously creeping up, and they began to take on meaning about themselves. It's like a very confusing feeling, right? So if you have any like really weird difficulties with memory that you just can't pinpoint, or attention or overall mental clarity, this could be, a piece of the puzzle for you. Um, so, and the consequences, as we know, could be very far reaching, right? Like it just affects your whole scope of life. So it's really important to understand the neurotoxic effects. Um, and do your best to be aware of any potential sources, right? So you can protect your mental health, right? And I do think, the wave of the future, more of us are going to get into addressing this more deeply. I really see that a necessary thing to help us like really reclaim our cognitive function, our emotional well-being, right? Um Okay, so I covered a little bit about the enzyme disruption, right? The how it can affect our digestion, right? Like how it can lead to food intolerances, right? It can play a role in leaky gut. Mercury can displace many minerals. For example, one of them would be zinc. And we need zinc for our digestive enzyme synthesis and our liver function. The liver also is going to play a really big role in helping us process the nutrients that we do consume. It helps us secrete bile. Um, any impairment with either of these can exacerbate digestive issues, okay? So, and then Mercury can alter our gut microbiota, right? This can play a role in the dysbiosis that we experience in our gut, and how that affects everything. It can affect your brain, your mood, your skin, your immune, so on and so forth. So, as more and more people are demonizing gluten and dairy, and we should definitely not want the, conventional sources. Absolutely not. But like, I really just want us to get as many real foods back on the table, right? And not demonize the food, and really understand what's been done in the backdrop has led us here, okay? And so, I don't want to keep seeing this, let's eliminate all these foods and get into, this crazy diet regime. Like, we have got to stop this diet extremity situation that we are in. It's so much more is going on, right? And I think that's why we've done it. Like, we haven't seen the whole picture, and we haven't figured out ways to, create more learning and deeper understanding, so we can really dig in. And that's the arena that I've been in, is like really trying to help people bunker down and get to all the repair work as possible. But, it takes time. And it isn't like a quick fix. And we haven't wanted that collectively for a while. And now I think people are starting to realize, oh man, if I don't do this properly, I'm going to stay in this cycle, right? Now, beyond enzyme disruption, and how it like leads to dysbiosis, like it affects our beneficial bacteria, like, and then any harmful bacteria is thrown off. So this is like that next layer of how it can increase our inflammatory process and the chronicness of our symptoms and so on and so forth. So, right, like, so when you think about digestion, north to south, mouth to anus, like this can impact the whole thing. And we know that it takes optimal digestion and elimination and the microbiome for us to have, a healthy human frame, healthy emotions, and healthy mental scape. So, there's so much more I could get into. Like, Mercury can interfere with all our detox pathways, right? So we have to kind of like go back and work on all these pieces so that we can prepare ourselves to really deeply heal and then deeply detoxify these bigger things lurking in our systems. Now I want to say like something about the gut bacteria, right? They communicate with the brain through the vagus nerve, right? This is that major nerve that links all these systems together. So when this nerve is impacted or damaged by things like mercury, we can have a reduced growth of new brain cells, right? And that's not good either. So, we do have some research showing the exposure disrupting the function of the vagus nerve. Another thing that people are starting to get more awareness around, and oh, I heard it's important and this, that, and the other. And oh, I tried these nervous system hacks, these vagus nerve things, and kind of did a thing and maybe didn't do as much of a thing as I wanted it to. Well, that's because there's a lot that, impacted it. So please be patient. Please continue with the tools, the singing, whatever it is you're doing. But remember that there is something else in your system that could be making it harder. So this is where we get to the point where eventually we got to deal with these things, right? And then the vagus nerve having, disruptions also affects the whole thing, the mental health, the anxiety, the depression. So I just wanted to point that out. As we keep learning more, we have to keep remembering there's a lot of pieces that have created these disruptions. So I kept it simple. I didn't want to go too deep. I could totally do it. But I don't think it's necessary to get the point, right? Like to really understand, wow, okay, I see this in the collective. I see this in my life. I see this in my family, right? And so it just helps you see it. And then where do you start? Well, keep building the foundations of your health that I've talked about repeatedly in all my past episodes. And please don't ever stop. Just keep going. It's like we've got to turn the paradigm around. So a lot of what I'm going to suggest will primarily help in reducing the harmful effects that hidden mercury has in your body. And some of it will help you eliminate it to some degree as well, okay? To really eliminate more of it, like the deeply hidden or sequestered mercury, I do think this is where testing is required and a very specific approach. And then also, I just want to say, there's no way that we can test for all the hidden mercury that's lurking in your body, or any metal for that matter. So we have to go based on chronic symptoms, maybe they're not resolving, and then look at repeat biomarkers in different ways. There's a lot of cool ways we can see where it could be showing up, right? And that's when, if that's the case, that's where the deeper work comes in, right? So I'll start by walking us through my 7 pillars that I've talked about in the past. Our light environment, our air environment, our water, our movement, our food, our connection to others and nature, and our purpose, okay? But the first 5 really, make a little more sense to talk about. And then I'm always weaving in the backdrop the minerals and microbes, okay? Because that's like at the heart of my work. So some of this may seem repetitive and some of it may be repeat for you, but just think about it in the lens of what I've shared today. And maybe there's something you can take away that you can start to tweak in your life, okay? So exposure to sunlight and natural light, red light, helps our body in this mercury piece of the puzzle by, doing a lot of things for us. Like we all know it's how we make our vitamin D, right? Which is crucial for so many of the functions of our body, our immune function, our immune system, our detoxification processes, enhancing circulation, allowing for more effective transport of nutrients and waste products, including the toxins, including mercury. So, when I say red light, I mean natural light, right? Like the natural red from the sun, from fire, from candlelight. Right now, you can use a red light or red light therapy, or start to create a red light environment in your home. You can get some red light bulbs. You can get the little red night lights. You can start to think this way. Start getting rid of the old forms of lights. Control the light in your home environment. You probably can't do it in your work environment, on the road when you're driving, but you can get glasses and you can block the unnatural lights as best you can, right? So we want to be doing those things. So you probably know, oh my gosh, I need to tackle this piece of that, right? You're probably thinking that right now when I'm talking about it. But really, we want to increase the natural lights as best we can in our life and decrease the unnatural lights. Okay, gains and drains, y'all. This is going to improve the mitochondria function. It's going to help you with energy. You need energy to detoxify your body. You need to do this so that any exposures you might have now, new ones, you can handle and deal with and get rid of quickly, right? We also are going to have those anti-inflammatory effects, reducing any burden to your body, right? Enhancing the function of all your organs of elimination and detoxification. The other piece is oh man, I want to get into this in a bigger way, is like when we are exposed to the right light conditions, light and darkness, apart from all this unnatural light that we've been exposed to, it really helps us regulate different things, right? Including melatonin. And, we are supposed to be detoxifying when we sleep. A lot of people aren't even sleeping well. That's a whole other piece. So get your light environment right and see how that starts to help. But when we are in the dark, our body is, producing melatonin, right? And that's another piece that's helping us in this picture, right? And I'm really thinking that this is going to get much more airplay soon, this whole conversation around melatonin. We haven't been producing this darkness hormone properly in this artificially lit, lack of sunlight world. And melatonin is proving to be an even more powerful antioxidant than glutathione. And now this makes sense when we remember that we are light beings and light is our number one nutrient. So, we're missing some of the things that we needed to do the job right in the first place. So, the proper light exposure influences our microbiome as well, does a lot for us and helps us with digestion. It helps us break things down, including heavy metals. So it's so crucial. And I love how it supports gut health because it regulates our circadian rhythms. It helps us sleep better. It helps reduce stress, right? Like all those things are huge in helping us have a balanced microbiome. So if you don't have the environment of this proper for you yet and you want to counter some of it, that's where you can use targeted red light therapy. I don't think everyone has to run out and buy these devices, but you might want to consider it depending on your situation, right? And it's really going to affect a lot of things. So when our microbiome's thriving, we're going to be eliminating way better. It's huge. So water is the next one. So as you know, I've been collecting spring water, and I just want to say, the natural water we would have once consumed was loaded with these amazing compounds, right? And we all are at the effect of the loss of that. So I just want to talk about what natural mineral water contains. It has a lot of compounds, more than just the minerals that we've definitely finally figured that piece out. But it has a lot of things, right? And those compounds can help bind to heavy metals, making it easier for our bodies to detoxify. So for instance, humic and fulvic acids would have been found in these waters. And they can form stable complexes with heavy metals and reduce their bioavailability and aid in their removal. So everybody gets a little upset about the spring water and worried, well, does it have heavy metals? And I'm like, well, okay, hold that thought for 2 seconds. It has a lot of other things that are helping us out. Yeah, I don't want it to have an excess of any heavy metals myself either. But we have to understand how all this is working together. So then obviously the minerals in the water, right? All the different minerals really help and they compete with some of the metals, right? There's also silica more present in spring waters, and that can bind to the heavy metals and assist in their excretion as well. You guys know I love my herbs, right? And 2 of my favorite ones that I talk about all the time are nettles and oat straw, which are loaded with silica. And I talk about that in my magnesium guide for you as well. So check that out if you haven't already. Then like sulfur, right? Sulfates found in the water help us promote the detox as well. We can convert metals into less harmful forms when we have the right things in our body and the right processes working. Then we also have like tannins. These are polyphenolic compounds. They are in some spring waters. It's just yet another thing that can help bind to heavy metals. So generally speaking, the natural compounds that we would have gotten in our mineral-rich water, our natural waters, would be supporting our bodies effectively, detoxifying metals like mercury and keeping them from accumulating. Now, I know that there's a lot to say about this. Like, we have more metals than we did once upon a time. We haven't had the exposure to the right water for so long, right? So now we find ourselves like learning about all these elements and then taking them separately, right, to put them in play. And it's becoming a lot to manage. So I think the more we can try to return to the natural ways that nature would have done these things, so that in the long run, we aren't like literally having to take a million products to replace that divorcement from nature, as well as in light of the toxins, right? It just gets to be too much. So doing the best we can to go back to the original sources is really the first place to start. We can talk about whole home systems another time. But because water is so primary in supporting our bodies to eliminate through our urine, that's like one of the main ways we eliminate mercury is through our urine. So really doing the best you can to optimize your water consumption and your kidney function is really going to be key for all of us. And then, of course, the air that we breathe, as well as our breathing patterns. This is like a lot of stuff to talk about, but, when we start to work on it, it can really help us in this goal. We need fresh air. We need good breathing. We need optimal lung function. When we do that, we enhance the oxygen delivery to our cells. And, that involves all the detoxification pathways as well. So we need that oxygen for all our metabolic processes that help us break down toxins, including heavy metals. So proper oxygenation supports our liver, our kidneys, right? So everyone probably has some little small thing that they can do to help with this. One being practicing your breath. Practice some more mindfulness around your breath. Every day when you feel stressed out, pause and tune into your breath. No, people aren't just saying this to be airy fairy woo woo. It's literally real. Like it's such a big deal that we should take heed and start to really tune into our breath. When we start to do that and become more mindful of our breathing, we really can stimulate our lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system really helps us remove toxins from the body and promote circulation and, the whole thing, right? So, the environments that we've all lived in likely has some pollution. So, getting a handle on that in your house, right? Like finding ways to detoxify the air in your home, as well as practicing your breath, and learning to enhance your body's ability to breathe well again. And that's a whole nother conversation when we get into the whole airway piece as well. A lot of people are having issues in even the structure of their airways. And that's what Michelle taught me back in the episode I did with her, because that's her specialty. But there are a lot of things that we can do. And I think just putting awareness on this piece will help you start to think about it a little bit more for yourself. All right, movement should be obvious, right? Like movement helps us actually detox, right? It helps our blood circulation. It helps transport toxins to the organs that detoxify them, like our liver and kidneys. It helps with any mobilization that we are doing, and not stay stuck in our bodies and recirculate, right? Or go back into storage places. Movement and your lymph system, huge, huge, huge. We gotta move. We gotta move it, right? So we cannot move our lymphatic system without moving our bodies. So it's funny, like a lot of people are like, well, what should I do to work out? And I'm like, well, there's a lot you could do. Maybe if you don't have a routine at all right now, just start to jump. I mean, we all have feet and bodies. Just start to jump. You could get a rebounder or a trampoline if you want to. You don't have to. You can just jump on the ground, preferably in your bare feet on the ground would be even more awesome. But this is very simple, right? Like I'm just trying to keep it simple here. We all could jump way more, jump around. And then also the thing about movement that's helpful is getting to the point where we can sweat. We want to try to be sweating on the daily if possible. There are some studies suggesting that certain heavy metals can actually be excreted through our sweat. I'm not entirely sure to what degree that occurs or how much of it we are actually getting out through our sweat. I know the primary way would be the urine and the feces, but we can get some out through sweat. So, you want to be finding ways to sweat. And not everyone has a sauna, but sauna is great. You could do baths that make you sweat. You could get the kind of mini sauna situations. It doesn't have to be a full-blown sauna and let yourself sweat that way. And, the movement also helps your metabolism, right? And then it helps you break down accumulated toxins more efficiently. So we have to be thinking too, like if I have other burdens of toxicity in my body, that's probably making it harder for the heavier things to get out. So like you really want to be thinking whole picture here, not just laser focus on Mercury, get worried about it, and then go try to do some quick Mercury push, right? Like this is what we do. Of course, obviously being outside and moving your body is even better, right? Like you can start to see how you can stack these things and create a lifestyle based around nature can allow you to do a lot of the things that need to be done to help your body deal with all of this. I have an interesting story, and we don't know 100% for sure, but I had this family that I was working with for a while, and they were struggling to detox, right? And like, they spent a summer, they were getting outside way more and exposed to sun. And they bought like this family trampoline. It was like one of those really epic Bellicon ones. And they literally were on that thing like all the time, like every day. And when they retested their hair test in the fall, we were like, holy moly, what have you been doing? Because like it really changed their patterns all through the whole family. And we saw more heavy metals coming out, and we saw some really big shifts that we hadn't been able to get. And it really did seem like the combination of everything, the sun, the summer, their protocols, and all that movement really made a big difference. So you can actually have some fun trying to heal your body, okay? And it helps with bowel movements, right? Like that's one of the primary ways we excrete mercury is through our feces. So jump around, see if it helps you move your bowels too. I know a lot of people are constipated out there. All right. And then, of course, we have to talk about food, right? Nutrients. We got to get the right ones in. This is going to help us combat any exposure and aid us in detoxifying. So this is like the quick high-level overview. I could talk about food for a whole week straight and not cover it, right? Like we don't have to know everything about everything. We just have to, start sourcing better quality, pay attention to this piece, keep pivoting. Obviously, avoid the harmful foods. What are they? all the ultra processed foods, right? We just got to steer clear of them. And I know this is hard to do this. So don't be a perfectionist, but do the best you can, make the strides. They can quickly deplete your body's glutathione. Obviously, there's a lot of things it can do, but I'm just saying it for simplicity around this topic, right? So keep up working on that one. And then, of course, focusing on a mineral-rich diet and one that feeds your microbes. So a diet in minerals, vital, right? I know it seems challenging. It's not impossible. I revamped my Magic of Magnesium guide this year for you, or sorry, last year. And I put it in my Magic of Magnesium starter kit. You can get that on the top of my website, the link at the top of my website, or at the bottom of this show notes of this episode. And it's a way to look at this with one mineral in particular of how I approach this, okay? So it should help you out in more ways than just magnesium. But that said, magnesium is particularly important for detoxifying mercury because it aids in the production of glutathione, for one thing, right? That antioxidant that's helping us neutralize it, okay? And it supports your nervous system, which could have been over time adversely affected by the mercury, right? And help you reduce oxidative stress. Same is true for many nutrients and other minerals. And that's just one that I think anyone can start with. And I have a whole entire resource for you. So check that out. We also need to make sure we're consuming enough salt daily. Even if you think you're doing this, it's worth checking in. Like, am I actually eating enough salt? Start with like 3/4 teaspoon a day throughout the day and see if you even get that much. Not everyone needs that much. Very few people need less. It's the people who have like blood pressure issues and medications and such involved there. But primarily most people, 3/4 teaspoon. Some people need even more. Some of my more burned out people can take in more. Especially if you have like low blood pressure, for example. Also, Whole Foods C. This is like your local fresh seasonal foods, vine ripened, tree ripened, all that stuff. Many people do need a little extra, and I recommend a whole food form. I have a whole podcast on this as well. Obviously, we need plenty of B vitamins, so a diverse diet helps us to get this. Some people need a little bit of a more strategic plan simply because of the genetic SNPs, the polymorphisms that many people have. But, we got to start with food. And then antioxidant-rich foods as well. Anything antioxidant-rich is going to help us here. The most simple way to say it is eat a wide array of in-season, fresh, local, colorful foods. And you're going to get much more antioxidants than you did eating the standard American diet. Iodine-rich foods are going to be important. Please start to figure out ways to get them in there. I talk all the time about this one seasoning blend. It's called Nettle Seaweed Gamasio. And this is great because it's loaded with minerals. You could also make a kelp gamasio. You could buy some kelp, add it to seasonings. You could put it in your bone broth. There's a lot you could do with kelp. A lot of people are taking kelp capsules and, there's just like a lot of ways to do this. Don't feel like you have to go overboard, but just let it start to be in there. I do think supplementation can be necessary, but this is a more therapeutic approach, and that's got to be done carefully. So please don't go beyond physiological amounts unless you know for sure you need them and you're really being super balanced. I just personally think it requires professional supervision. I've seen this done poorly in a lot of ways. So I think what we found was like 12.5 milligrams. That's just based on certain information. Don't feel like you have to go to that amount right away. Just start including more. And see how you do and let your body kind of show you. If you do too much too fast when you're not used to it, and you never know how it could go. So just take your time. Don't be in a rush. Don't feel like you have to achieve this like number goal out of the gate or anything like that. All right. And then just like really quick, I want to say a little bit more about glutathione. Because one of the things we're trying to do through our food is give ourselves more of the foods that contain the nutrients that help us with this production of it. It's not necessarily going to do the whole job in certain cases, but it's important to start there, okay? Glutathione plays a role in detoxifying mercury by binding to it, making it more water soluble, which helps get it out through the urine or the bile and supports our liver. And it's just what helps us process and excrete heavy metals. And it protects our cells from oxidative damage. So we want to be producing adequate glutathione. I look at a lot of biome tests and we have a marker to show this. And so many people are not in their with their gut, their microbiome and how it helps. This is not working right. So we have a lot of little pieces to start to put together to help us with this. But through food, a lot of what I already mentioned, but particularly sulfur-rich foods can be incredibly helpful. Like your garlic and your onion and your cruciferous, right? And including pasture-raised eggs, grass-fed raw dairy. Please source good quality dairy, guys, because pasteurization destroys our glutathione. High-fat dairy products that are raw, that you can tolerate. You don't have to go crazy on the amounts here because, you also have to be able to digest it. Grass-fed meats. I really love figuring out ways to get organ meats in if you can, and diversify them as well. A lot of people are taking organ meat capsules these days, for convenience, but we can also get them in our diet. More and more places are selling ground meat with some blend of organ meat in them. And I have an amazing recipe for chicken liver pate that honestly, if you gave it a chance, you might like it. And then things like whey protein, people are using that as well. Another piece, increase your fiber. I talked about this in an episode if you want to listen to that. And when I say fiber, I'm talking about functional fiber. I'm talking about plants, prebiotics, right? And we know that this is going to help enhance our bile production, help us excrete toxins and heavy metals, because the fiber is going to help just bind it all up and carry it all out, right? It just binds to the toxins in our digestive tract. It prevents us from reabsorbing them, and it promotes that gut microbiome, which also supports our detox. And it feeds our bacteria. And, we've got a lot of things that are hurting our bacteria, right? The antibiotic overuse, the stuff like that. So, and it helps make you move your bowels as well. And, we also have this whole thing where binders have become a thing, right? Like they've risen in popularity and the use of holistic health realm, like in light of these plans that we're trying to do to help the body get rid of all this stuff. I have a lot more to say about this, but here's the thing. We have natural binders within our diet. So let's start there, okay? And truth be told, most of us truly need to build our tolerance to fibers and increase them in our body to benefit from them. So definitely wanted to mention that as well. When it comes to supplementation, I don't want to say too much because you're not my client. And I do think when we get into the therapeutic realm of things, we need to test, not guess. So, that's where you want to get support and, figure out how to do that, a more therapeutic approach from that lens. Okay. But generally speaking, there are some really great things we can do. I like milk thistle a lot. As you know, I like herbs. I like that nature has provided these plants for us to do the jobs that we need them to do. And, milk thistle is one that can help boost glutathione. I have a whole podcast episode on it for you. I said a whole bunch of things about a whole bunch of minerals. Really, like selenium is a big one that stands out to me. Um, that one is a little safer to supplement with small amounts because it really doesn't throw things out of whack too much when you take small amounts. But, try to find sources of selenium in your diet. I did mention zinc earlier and its role in our digestion and helping us with glutathione. So you want to make sure you're eating zinc-rich foods. Supplementation in small amounts can be okay. When you get into higher doses for longer term, without the understanding of how it affects things, you can get into trouble. Did a whole episode on that as well. Now, a couple broad options because, if we are thinking about minerals, no mineral works alone. It's good to get multi-minerals, if you will. A lot of them I'm not happy with the balance of. I do like Designs for Health Complete Mineral Complex. It's also in a glass bottle. I like that as well. It's a pretty balanced one. That's a good one to check out. I like the brand Iden because they have the trace mineral drops. I like that we can get them in this form in glass bottles as well, because we absorb the ionic form much more quickly because it would have been in our water too, right? So if you have, not figured out the mineral piece for your water, you might want to get some trace mineral drops and start using them. I also really like RNA Resets Ionic Minerals, the Pico form. It's a very quickly absorbed, very efficient, effective. I just wish that they would use glass, but maybe we'll work on that and see if they can do that. But I've been very happy with this line of minerals and its effectivity, and I use it with my clients. But first and foremost, nutrient-dense, rich foods. Keep working on that. You're going to help yourself out a ton. And I do think mercury can hurt our connections, our relationships, and our purpose. Those are the last two pillars. I currently have a client who has made really significant strides in their mental and emotional health through mineral balancing, as well as overcoming social anxiety since we began working together. Their journey involves several hair tests, the removal of amalgams, and a really strong commitment to their path. But this piece has probably been the most significantly impactful to them. And that's a really cool story. From where they started to where they are now. And I can see it in them too. It's been really cool. So, how mercury affects you being full you, we don't know to what degree that's playing a role, but it's definitely there if mercury is causing problems for you. So, and it's all about it's a joy to be being you. Gosh, I can't say that. You know what I'm saying, right? So those are just some of the things anyone can consider working on to support your body's natural ability to protect your system from damage done by hidden mercury lurking, as well as really help you start to function better. So you can just any current exposures don't stick with you, right? And then once you have a more solid foundation with all these things in play, then you can you can go into the deeper work and it's going to work better. And it's going to be, you're going to be more capable. You'll have more capacity and it won't hurt you to hell and back. And, you'll have the bandwidth within yourself to tackle this deeper work. So a lot of people are in this state of overwhelm, oh my God, there's so much to do. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? We have to always hit the pause, see where we're at. You can only sustain what you can and will do. There's a lot we could do. There's always a lot we could do. But it has to be what you can sustainably do now. And what will you actually do? And what, getting more education to learn, what it is you can do. I think this is incredibly empowering. I think it's really awesome, right? Stay on the journey, keep chipping away. It feels very rewarding when you look back and realize how far you've come. All right. Well, if you're struggling with health issues that you think could be related to mercury or just in general, given your health history and you're, finding it a challenge to make progress on your own, or you want to be more preventative or targeted in this approach, I provide personalized guidance to help people in this way. We're looking to take the right actions in the right order for safe detoxification, including looking at where mercury could be posing issues for you. So to learn more about working with me, you can visit my website, lydiajoy.me. You can also find the link in the notes anywhere you're viewing or listening to this. And I do recommend starting with a hair tissue mineral analysis to look at your current biochemical status. It really helps us see, all these systems that I talked about today and kind of like where you're at, and we can kind of get this big picture overview of like where you need to shore things up and then where you need to target and then how you can do a more therapeutic approach. All right, guys. Well, I do hope you found this episode helpful. I really enjoyed putting it together for you. So please share it with a friend, chat me up on Instagram, or consider leaving a review on iTunes or whatever platform that you choose. I really appreciate you for tuning in. So until next time, stay wild and well.